Welcome everyone to MailFuzz Movies. I am Peter, and today I'm going to do something a little bit different, which is just doing a couple of quick reviews for some movies that I happened to watch in the past week. Not stuff that's going to be on any of the other main review shows, the podcasts. This is just stuff that I watched. I thought maybe some bite-sized reviews for things would be a nice change of pace, and let me talk about some other movies for a change. Doesn't mean that they won't show up in full reviews at some point down the line, but many of them won't, and that's okay. So I watched Molly's Game. Is the first one I want to talk about today, which is a 2017 film, which is already 9 years ago, which feels disgusting to say out loud, but this is Aaron Sorkin writing and directing, which is notable because, you know, he's well known as a writer before this, but this is maybe, I think his first film as a director. You can tell it's his voice, you can tell it's his writing, like 30 seconds in, as soon as someone starts talking, you get that it's Aaron Sorkin. And I think the thing I was thinking about most as I was watching it is the comparison to The Social Network, because they're both based around the story of a real person. They're both biographical in some way, and they have characters who are doing stuff that are, you know, morally in a kind of a grey area at points and things like that. And so it was hard not to think about those two things, but obviously we don't have David Fincher directing this one, so arguably there might be a downturn in the direction quality. To be fair to it though, I actually still think it looked very slick. It felt very slick. You know, the editing was good. It's moving around two different parts of the timeline where we're sort of following her on the build up to her trial after most of the story, and that's where Idris Elba is also there. He's the lawyer character. Molly herself is played by Jessica Chastain. And then we cut back for large chunks of the basically the story, and it's almost like it's taken right out of the book, which she's even written inside the movie by this point, and kind of going through how she set these poker games up, these illegal or kind of illegal poker games, and how it escalated and how she got into trouble along the way, and, you know, wherever the story goes, which I won't spoil exactly where it goes, but I liked it. I think it's a solid movie. I think, despite the fact that it's 2 hours and 20 minutes, I think it actually moves very efficiently. It feels like it's breezing by, even though it is quite dense and there's a lot of information. And I think that is largely down to Aaron Sorkin's like skill with dialogue. I think if you're someone who doesn't like Aaron Sorkin's type of dialogue and the way he writes characters, this won't change your mind. It's very much him. Like, and you can tell instantly if you know how he writes that it is him from the first 30 seconds of it. But one of the things that he's very good at is that even though he has characters constantly talking, obviously most audience members won't retain everything that's being said, but he's very good at making sure the important stuff sticks, that you will need to know for later on in the story, stuff that needs to be there for the impact to be felt. So the very quick pace of the dialogue kind of keeps a very upbeat kind of sort of feel to it the entire time. You're constantly kind of being ushered through various scenes, and it's doing lots of cutaways as she's explaining who characters are, because she's narrating a lot at the time, like for all the backstory stuff. She's narrating pretty much constantly. So I think the direction is actually pretty good. It feels like he's come in here and has a good idea of what to do. So I like the movie quite a bit. I think it's pretty good, even very good. I don't think it quite crosses into great for me. And I think that's mainly just because as I was getting towards the end of the story and we were building up to kind of the climax of everything, I realized that I didn't necessarily feel that emotionally invested in what the outcome was going to be. Which for a lot of movies would actually be an even bigger problem than it would be for this one. But this movie is a very good character study, and it's a very good character study of exploring why she is as ambitious as she is, why she handles herself a certain way, how she handles herself. Like, all these things work very well, and it's kind of revealed ironically through a lot of the discovery scenes where she's going through details with her lawyer, and that stuff is really well done and it's solid. I just don't think it ever made me feel like emotionally connected to the characters per se. I think maybe a difference to compare it again to Social Network is that in Social Network, you couldn't really necessarily root for or care for Mark Zuckerberg that much, but there were other characters. The Andrew Garfield character in that movie kind of became the sympathetic one as time went on. And I guess to an extent, Idris Elba's got some of that here, because he kind of is this noble, loyal lawyer character, and that kind of works to an extent. But I think that's what maybe would have put it over a line for me, where I'd be like really singing its praises and saying that it's like a must-see. As it is, though, I still think it's good. Like, it's very good. It's really slick. It knows how to move through the sequences. It gets a lot of information out. It's not exactly the the most conventional story of this kind. I guess it probably shares the most comparisons to like a gangster story, like something like, I don't know, like a Goodfellas, where it's like the criminal career and then how it all wraps up by the time it was over. It kind of has a little bit of that kind of feel to it, although very different in a lot of ways, of course. And obviously the crimes, as it were, that she's committing are nowhere near in the same scale. But it's all kind of about this, this thirst that she had as a character to go after all this, and the power that came with it. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a really solid movie. That I had a good time watching. I don't know if it's one that I'll necessarily feel like super compelled to return to, but the cast are very good. Chastain is excellent in the lead role. Idris Elba is very solid and dependable in the main supporting role. There's a couple other faces that pop up that most people will recognize, which were surprises, actually. I wasn't expecting them to be there. But it's one of those movies that for me it falls into very good but not quite hitting great. But I mean, to be fair, if this is kind of like his first attempt really at directing his own work, maybe not including TV episodes, he may have directed some episodes of TV before this, I'm not sure, then it's a really solid first attempt, and hardly one that I think, like it definitely comes with a lot of experience in the movie making industry, even if he's not actually directed before. You can feel the experience there, even though he's trying to do a whole new part of the process here. So, very good. Molly's Game is a really solid movie. Just not one that I fell in love with maybe as much as I would have liked to have done. It kind of, just kind of gets to the threshold of that and just doesn't quite cross over into it. But that was my feelings on Molly's Game. And then the other movie I want to talk about that I watched this past week, going back a little bit further in time to 1979, we have a film called The In-Laws, which was directed by Arthur Hiller and stars Peter Falk and Alan Arkin. Which is a hell of a pair, right? For a duo to lead your movie, especially a movie that's a comedy, and this isn't primarily a comedy. It's got a little bit of action and whatever, but it's a comedy. The premise of this one is that they're both fathers of people. I don't know where that sentence was going. Their kids are getting married, right? Peter Falk's son is marrying Alan Arkin's daughter. And Alan Arkin's this, upstanding middle-class guy. He's a dentist, and he's not been able to meet his future, other in-law yet because he keeps being around. And the movie actually starts off with a heist. There's a heist scene that happens, and Peter Falk seems to be behind it. So it's like, oh, he's kind of like this criminal character who's going to throw in a lot of wrenches into the potential, family matters and all the rest of it. The wedding's about to happen this coming weekend. But the actual movie revolves around the idea that during his whole heist and being on the run with the stolen goods, Peter Falk's character ends up kind of enlisting the help of Alan Arkin's character without telling him what he's getting involved in. So we get kind of this wacky duo comedy with a little bit of action where they're kind of on the run from people. There's some smuggling of stolen goods or money or things like that. And it's a lot of Alan Arkin being just in shock and flustered by what's happening to him, and Peter Falk frankly is still basically just being Columbo the entire time. He is in full Columbo mode here with his nonchalant and kind of the way that he's hand waving things. It feels full Columbo, but in a character where it makes sense for him to be very, very Columbo. It feels like this character might have been thought up because, or at the very least it was molded around the fact that once they had Peter Falk, oh hey, he's very good at doing this type of thing, but he's going to do it not as a detective here. He's going to do it in this other role. And there's some directions and turns that it takes by the end, which, I won't spoil here. But yeah, so this is just one, like a lot of movies that I will probably end up talking about in this format, or just movies that I bought on sale and just finally got to watching them. This one is a decent watch. It's pretty fun. Almost entirely because of the two leads, which is why I just spent a lot of time talking about them. They have really good chemistry. You've got Alan Arkin as the straight man who's flustered and getting frustrated with Falk's character, and then Falk is doing the kind of the lovable mischief maker who's got a plan in mind that he's not really told the other guy about, and it does feel kind of Columbo, where it's he never quite says one more thing, but it feels like he might at any point. You know, maybe that's the one difference here, is that he doesn't say one more thing. The one more thing just happens, and then Alan Arkin looks at him like, what the hell, dude? And then he comes up with, oh, that's the thing I meant to tell you. And he's very nonchalant about it. So it's a very pleasant movie to watch, and it's a really good pair of actors, and they completely carry it, and they're the reason to watch it. The movie itself, otherwise, though, is just kind of fine. And I say that because not that the plot's the most important thing here, but I do think the plot is not maybe up to the standards that would like really turn it up into like, oh, this is like a gem. That's just, you know, because part of me going into it was like, man, this pair of actors, like, why isn't this movie more known or talked about? Like, I've never, like, until I saw it on sale, I never heard of it. Why isn't this one that's brought up a lot more? And honestly, I think it's because the plot itself is kind of just enough to get things going and no more. Like, it really does feel like they could be in some more interesting situations, or like you could have the exact same chemistry and the exact same character arc and like sort of kind of friendship that forms, but with better events and better set pieces to put them through. And I don't mean big action sequences by any stretch. I don't mean that. I just mean, I don't know, something that feels a little bit more tight. You know, it kind of feels like there's not a lot of consistency to the type of scenarios they find them in. It kind of feels like it's just making up stuff as it goes along, in a way that I don't necessarily think like adds to it. It just kind of feels like, oh, this is just the next part they thought of, as opposed to, oh, it really feels like a tight idea where like everything kind of calls back upon itself as it's going on, or, you know, I don't know. The story itself just isn't that impressive and just feels a little bit lackluster. But the two leads and their performance and their chemistry is very entertaining and very much worth watching for that. Having said that, though, like, you know, if I'm comparing this to the other movie I talked about, and they're very different movies, I would say I like Molly's Game a bit more than I did this. This was still pleasant, but I think there's a reason why it's not really been as remembered as much as it perhaps could have done. Although apparently I think this was in the Criterion Collection at one point, so clearly some people do give it some cred, but I had never heard of this one until I just happened to stumble upon it. So, you know, and the supporting cast are fine for the most part, but there's definitely some stuff where, in the third act, there's I guess I'll call him a villain for lack of a better term. He's not really a villain though, but like, he's so over the top and goofy, and the type of jokes that are coming from him are so like just kind of silly. It feels like he's out of a very different type of movie, like a movie that's more of a full-on silly comedy, like not necessarily a spoof like an Airplane, but something that's like way more kind of like cartoony. And I kind of like that. Well, there's some cartoony elements of like, oh, the two guys are getting shot at and they never get hit. That just kind of feels like it fits the tone of the movie. I wouldn't say the humor itself is like cartoony. It's more like, you know, one character being very suave and relaxed and the other one freaking out because he's in a dangerous situation. Having a silly villain like they do here, I think just kind of like was maybe a little bit of a whimper towards the end of the movie, but that's kind of, you know, about it. But it was a decent watch, though. I would definitely say if it sounds interesting based on these actors, I would give it a look-see. There's some fun stuff, like, you know, Peter Fox sauntering into his dental practice and saying how good of a dentist he is to this random woman that he doesn't know, you know, felt very Columbo, except he's not a police officer and has absolutely no reason to be able to barge into a dentist like this. So, you know, there's some fun stuff there, but definitely just decent to, you know, maybe even very decent, but just decent by the end. So that is The In-Laws. So that's a couple of quick reviews, just to give some thoughts on some random stuff I watched this week. I'd love to do this more or less weekly if I happen to get a chance to watch some extra movies. So I'll, you know, maybe be back next week. And if I don't get to watch movies, no biggie. I'll just be back like a week later or whatever. And I'll, you know, it'll be one or two each time, I suspect, just in short form kind of impressions and some key talking points that I think are worth mentioning. But yeah, so that was Molly's Game from 2017 and The In-Laws from 1979. Thank you for joining me. Keep watching movies. You can, of course, support MailFuzz Movies and all the shows we do over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, or even via YouTube membership if that's more your thing. But that is me, so thank you once again for watching or listening. I always appreciate it. Keep watching movies, and I will see you next time.